Critics of the pro-life movement will say that you can be pro-life and vote for Democrats because no one should be a single issue voter. And Democrats help address many other important life issues, right? Here we go. Here's the whole life perspective on the question, do pro-lifers need to apply their beliefs to more than just abortion in order to be truly pro-life? Or can we maintain a narrowly focused approach with a singular goal, to end abortion? Whole life advocates insist that if pro-lifers were really pro-life, they would support a bunch of leftist justice items, right? Like open borders or universal health care or a universal basic income. And they would be more vocal and involved with ending systemic racism and ensuring that we never get into a war again. So in other words, they confuse contingent evils with absolute evils. They insist that protection of life in the womb is morally equivalent to quality of life outside the womb, which is a morally outrageous statement. Most of the issues that whole life advocates insist that pro-lifers adopt and act upon are actually issues aimed at improving quality of life for those already born, and those individuals it is not legal to kill. The pro-life perspective is about protecting life in the womb for a class of human beings that it is currently legal to kill, right? So that's your quick summary of the pro-life versus whole life debate. But that's the assumption that drives this myth, that you actually should vote for Democrats because you shouldn't elevate abortion in a moral hierarchy. You have to hold all of these issues together because they all relate to life, right? You're called the pro-life movement. So therefore, vote for Democrats because they address more life issues. This is ridiculous, right? So the assumption is that abortion is morally equivalent to healthcare, economic inequality, poverty, and war. They're all the same. Now, abortion is not the only issue of our day, obviously. Any more than slavery was the only issue in 1860 or killing Jews was the only issue in 1940. But both were the dominant issues of their day. While many issues are important, they don't all carry the same moral weight. Abortion is an absolute evil, and we should not divert votes or organizational resources away from ending absolute evils in order to prevent contingent evils. And let me tell you what I mean by that. This distinction is important between contingent and absolute evils. For example, war is a contingent evil because it may or may not be wrong. This is the idea of a just war theory. You could find yourself in a situation in your foreign policy and as a country where not going to war would be wrong because of the international threat posed by an evil regime whose actions are endangering and slaughtering their own people and would wish to do the same to your people. I'm thinking, I don't know, Hitler, a crazed loon who was rounding up human beings and slaughtering them literally in a systematic way and wanted to take over the whole world. Yeah, it was a good thing that we fought that war to end that evil. That would be a just war, right? So war can be a contingent evil because it may or may not be evil. But abortion is an absolute evil. As Scott Klusendorf points out, these critics are asking us to overlook an absolute evil in favor of preventing contingent ones, like economic inequality or unjust immigration laws or poverty. Now, here's a thought experiment for those who insist that you can't be a single issue voter and you have to juggle all issues equally. If all political realities were equal, right? All political realities being equal, if the current disagreement over abortion was instead a disagreement over the moral question of slavery again, would these critics still insist that one cannot be a single issue voter, but ought to consider all relevant issues pertaining to life before voting? Of course not. If all of our political realities were equal right now, but the issue in the hottest contention, besides systemic racism, was not abortion, but slavery, which actually is systemic racism, then would the same woke progressives insist that you cannot be a single issue voter, even though you're doing that to end the institution of slavery? That you can't be a single issue voter because you know what? The economic equality of plantation owners is morally equivalent to their purchase of human beings and whipping them and treating them like cattle. The fair wages of the middle-class white people during the 1850s, you have to take that into consideration. Don't be a single issue voter on slavery. No, everyone becomes a single issue voter when the issue is slavery, don't they? But they don't on abortion. So what does their unequal application of this opposition to single issue voting reveal about their view of unborn children? It reveals that they don't really view the unborn as a full person. Shocker, newsflash. All of this linguistic, euphemistic bigotry is just a political strategy to siphon votes away from Republicans who, though imperfect, are the only reasonable political option for people living in reality that killing babies is really bad and we shouldn't enshrine that in law. That is their goal. But the knife cuts both ways, doesn't it? If we ought to balance all issues directly or tangentially related to life before voting, then the Democratic Party nominee is automatically disqualified for being pro-abortion and failing to uphold the first and most important of all natural rights, the right to life. But they're not going to apply their own rule to their own ideology, are they? No, because if the left didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. This is merely about undermining the pro-life movement 7 weeks, 6.5 weeks before a presidential election. So that's the third myth, that you can be pro-life and vote for Democrats because you shouldn't be single-issue voters, and Democrats help address more other life issues that are really morally equivalent to killing 1 million babies every year in their mother's wombs.